Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they want to say, well, I remember Flat Earth Nation Golden Age past. That was my channel before YouTube took it away. So that's still good. That's part of what you don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. This is my third video today, and I feel like it's been a very profitable Lord's Day. I had been in touch with Salty Sergio. He may pop on. In the meantime, I've got uh, all the info I need to say it's definitely time to show this because I'm going to look at a video. This is important, talking about Second Esdras. Was it quoted in Scripture? Well, that would be a big deal. And if some of the, big name Geneva Bible, Young's literal translation, there are a few that will use a footnote that goes to Second Ezra, chapter 1, and quote what I was using this morning about how he would gather them as a hen gathers the chicks, but they would not. And then, that's, in the Geneva Bible, it's linked to Second Esdras. So maybe that Jesus really did speak in Latin, not Aramaic. We'll have to check it out and see. We've seen the disclaimer. Now I'll see if we've got any new pictures here on these downloadies. Here's the thumbnail. So I thought that's okay. It just, it took me a little longer than I want to find the right thing to work with. What are Catholic Apocrypha deuteroconical books? It's too white. That didn't work either. And how, the Johannine comma from Erasmus, he put it in his third edition of what they call the Vulgate. And it basically, there'd be no Trinity without that verse. They call it the Johannine comma because even the KJV only people have to fight for it, even though it's in a comma. They say no. It's printed in English. There you go. Here's a little bit about Latin. Renaissance Latin was used from the 1300s to the 1500s, so they say, and the classicized Latin that followed through to the present are often grouped together as New Latin, which have in recent decades become a focus of renewed study, given their importance for the development of white culture, religion, and science. The vast majority of written Latin belongs to this period, but its full extent unknown. The Renaissance, where they told people, we're going to take away God, make a 10-day work week, and preach virtue because we're humanist and you Christians got to go. French Revolution, you heard about it? Off with their heads and all of that. Hey, it's right there, Renaissance humanists. They had this guy, Petrarch, and others began to change their usage of Latin as they explored the texts of the classical Latin world. Skills of textual criticism evolved in that time of the Renaissance to create much more accurate versions of the extant text. Oh, they thought they were making those Latin things. They were changing it, making it much more, creating it much more accurate. Through the 15th and 16th centuries, they worked on it. And it says some important texts were rediscovered. By who? Comprehensive versions of authors' works were published. Isaac Casaubon and Joseph Scaliger. Did you ever hear the guy who rewrote the history He's the bad guy in the whole. They added 1,000 years. Scaliger, these guys did it. They were in love with classical Latin. For all we know, classical Latin is like Esperanto, a made up language, because it sure is not Aramaic or even close, a made up language where they could say, this is what Jesus taught. And he didn't speak Greek or Aramaic. You guys are all wrong. The Johannine comma is a short clause found in the epistle of First John in chapter 5. It spans verses 7 and 8. Erasmus, that's blocked out there, but I had to fit in there where it says these three agree in one. But it's Erasmus omitted the text of the Johannine comma from his first and second editions because it hadn't been presented to him. Nobody decided that, hey, we're going to fake this now. He didn't believe it. He was working on for his area, their language translation. And then along came Rome and said, no, you've got to add this. It wasn't in the first or second editions, which, as far as I know, we've only heard about. So this was around what they call 1522, after being accused of reviving Arianism, and after he was informed of some Greek manuscript that contained the verse. There's a footnote. It was faked. Spoiler alert. Although he expressed doubt as to its authenticity in his annotations, because he's basically was saying, I am being forced to put this verse in here. Because they would have killed him, burned him alive, tore off his skin. So with his being able to express doubt to the authenticity of one Greek manuscript that contained a verse about an alleged Trinity, he put it in. I'm not saying I wouldn't do the same thing. I don't know. Many of the subsequent and early printed editions before the KJV, who those KJV only people, they'll fight to the death. So that's less than 100 years. You could call it 90. Some otherwise very good Bibles, Coverdale, Geneva, Douay-Rheims, KJV. It doesn't. It's just toyed with, monkeyed with. I read it for years. I struggled to change to the New King James. Now, later editions, based on Textus Receptus, such as Robert Young's literal translation and the New King James Version, because of pressure, decided to include the verse, not because they thought it was true. In the 1500s, it was not always included in Latin it was hardly ever included in Latin New Testament editions, though it was in the Clementine, oh my dar, Vulgate. However, Martin Luther, he said, nah. Nah. So here's the comma. Everything in brackets should not be in scripture. But the people, people love to tell you, and they love to tell me, I got it. Here's what we need. And they're going to, they're strong on this. And they're going to say, but I'm going to say, what about this? Here's the comma. In heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these three are one. You can have much of an argument for a Trinity without that as your grounding, and then be able to go back and read into it that, no, the dove is the Holy. They will not let it go. They won't let the globe go if their heart is not changed. What it should read is, there are three that bear record: the Spirit, the water, the blood. These three agree in one. That there is one creator God that was a spirit. Now we got this right here, not River City. Oh my goodness. Look at South Bend. I saw this earlier. When did I don't know if it says what time I took the picture. Does it? probably if I looked in the info. But I was born in South Bend. My family, our reunions were in New Carlisle, and they were about to get hit. And they did get hit. And look there's a Bible town, Goshen, another Plymouth. I wonder where the old Carlisle was. How can you trust those victimized by how can those victimized by the system trust them when those in power are the perpetrators of the child sexual abuse and exploitation? And they're in it hard. That's their goal. That's their goal in life. Hello, Spider-Man Reborn. That's an interesting thumbnail title. So here's this. Hey, Salty, you can pop on anytime. I want to go over this here. This is the short video that Sergio shared with me, and because I covered this verse, and there you can see I stopped it right here. This is a Geneva Bible, and people are wondering, well, why would he do it? Well, because Erastus didn't want to die. They were basically saying, we found this one Greek thing that you don't trust, but you'll put it in. To me, it's like planned argument, because right now, well, let's just look, let's check on the breaking weather.
Shepherdsville.
So it looks like Ohio is going to get hit bad. Indiana got hit bad. Wisconsin got the ice storm.
Tornado warning has been
live as we speak. A new tornado broke out
for Washington Courthouse in Williamsport. Going towards Clarksburg, Plano,
cover,
and Pancos.
Go to your lowest floor. Put on a helmet. The Latin Vulgate. Switzerland has adopted the country's Latin short name, Helvetica. That's like a font. Look, it's that Greek goddess thing again. Coins and stamps, since there's no room to use all the nation's 4 official languages. The Passion of the Christ. I thought that was Aramaic they used. They're saying it was Latin. I don't think so. I thought that was the emphasis was that it was on Latin. Latin goes back to a little place. We'll look at the pictures. To a little place in India, not India, Italy. This is much expanded. Now, after 70 AD, what do we really trust about their history when they say, oh yeah, see, they're going to add 1,000 years to it and then mix up the golden reign, the golden age, although it was ruled with a rod of iron because of the wheat that were mixed with the tares. Parable much? So that's the thing. That's why how can we trust Polycarp and these other guys that go like, oh, I knew Jesus and the Apostle Paul, and we had it rough. No, you were either raptured or you were not, or if you were that close with the Lord, you made it. You didn't write history and act like, yep, it was just a little local Armageddon. The whole world didn't suffer. Tiberius and everybody went back and life went on. It was a judgment on the world, or the Bible's not true. Latin started in this little area. They can trace it, and they can get zeitgeisted, like they like to go, oh, we could track the Hebrew. They did this, they did that, they did this. And of course, they're using the Scaliger calendar, adding the added 1,000 years in 300 AD, when this war and the Peloponnesians were doing that and the other thing. It's fake. You're still going to use it up in some places in that area. That was their language, and they decided to make it everybody's language somehow. So that's interesting. We got that going. Hola, Sergio, ¿qué pasa?
How's it
¿Cómo
going?
está usted?
Muy bien. Muy bien. Gracias.
Got a few people in here that I don't know. Not seeing some people in here that I do know, and haven't seen them all day because I think they're caught up in this weather, Sergio. I really
Okay, that's
do.
right. There's a lot of East Coasters, huh, over there.
You guys in California went through it, you know.
Yeah, I
seemed-
came and passed.
Everybody takes their turn. You guys had a rough little bit there with the fires and atmospheric rivers, and so here, pop in, and we're looking at the pictures now. I'm just going to be trying to talk about Latin. Really, is it what the I don't know, that's a pretty good argument about the Trinity, that it came from that. And if we can, assume they're faking it because they want people to believe in the Trinity, and so this works, and then they like schisms and other things, why wouldn't you know, do it, add the 1,000 years? It's like the Seventh-day Adventist. If there was no added 1,000 years, then their form of dispensationalism really should have been believed. And those people in 1846 in the Great Disappointment, when they all sold their houses and waited for the rapture, it didn't happen, so they started the Seventh-day Adventist. That all would have made sense. But they added 1,000 years, and now these guys made it work. In high school, the Latin Club, which I did not get invited to join, and I didn't get on the National Merit Honor Society, although I passed, had better than a lot of them, and neither did my daughter. Not that it's a big deal, but they got a club, and they don't let even in the smallest levels let you in when people have qualified for it. I hope we would have turned it down. I know my daughter would have. She was pissed. So they got ecclesiastical Latin, Old Latin. Is there either this good, solid Latin language or not? The earliest known is Old Latin. It's called Archaic Early Latin, spoken in the Roman Kingdom around 753. Well, that's about 200 years before the Second Temple was rebuilt and the age of the Gentiles, because the Persians and Babylonian kings, according to scripture, have been proven, one by his wife and one by a series of, I guess you could call them prime ministers or something like that were running the country like Joseph did for the Pharaoh. Daniel, she had Shadrach, Meshach, miracle after miracle. And finally he just said, look, you can worship your God, but he is nothing compared to the Most High God of the Hebrews, as represented by Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach. And it was all good. These guys were coming up with a language about that time, and they used it, to 75 BC. This should help people do away with all of that nonsense about Masada and the brave Maccabean rebellion, of how they were going to fight back against Rome. Are you kidding me? They had no king but Caesar. They were a bunch of Barabbas choosing, backstabbing, covenant breaking. Jesus couldn't wait till the fire was kindled. Don't get me started. I'd never even heard of this before. This is all something that they are really into with this Latin. Bustophidan. Then they went to classical Latin. That was Plautus. He was going back to the Greeks and Cicero and saying how smart they were. They found the cursed tablets, graffiti. Then there was late Latin in an era that doesn't exist. This didn't happen. They, they're not above forging things. They've been caught forging things. They don't care if they're forged. People will love them anyway because they want to say, you people that think you're on the narrow road, I've been proving you wrong all my life. And here's one more way that you're stupid. We're not going to make it. Now, think of 1711. You know, that's a big year to me. 290 years before 9/11, and that's 45 years before the 1335. Blessed are the people that make it to then. There was never Muslims. There was never a Muhammad. They were non-Trinitarian Christians getting persecuted by Rome. That the Muhammad, it's 4 letters like Yahweh, that 4 times in what they call the Quran, and it just means, it's like saying he's our blessed savior. It's like saying, it's like he's our wise leader. It basically, they think it is a term for Jesus Christ. It was a non-Trinitarian hymnal, makes up 1/3 of the Quran, but it fits in my theology, so I'm not going to go in for any other thing, you know. Yeah, when the King James wrote the scriptures, the Masoretic texts were weak, I guess. There were 9 of them, but they were all pretty much the same. And well, now there's over 2,600 of them, and they're all pretty much the same, except for the ones that are obviously faked. There was no Muslim conference. 1711, add 1,000 years much, people. You know, hey, I think that you should, a little bit of benefit of the doubt should go to the guy that said it's a flat earth nation, the golden age is past, a lot of people believe it. And when I say it's because I got it this way, maybe you could say, well, maybe there's no Trinity, but I don't get the benefit of the doubt on anything. So what is this Roman kingdom that where they started speaking Latin, another language that they made worldwide? It's referred to as just another kingdom along the way. A Roman monarchy, a regal period of ancient Rome, was the earliest period in the Roman history when the city and its territory, like everything else, was ruled by kings, because it wasn't until Satan got loose where they said, hey, how can I deceive the nations if everybody's just ruling their own little areas in feudal kingdoms? We need nations. So temple time, rebuild that. Time of the Gentiles, going to Jerusalem. He did raise it up. He did make it prosperous. A lot of people, a lot of them were saved, but the leadership were, I forget, vipers and something else. Vipers and scoundrels, liars. If it'll come to me in 10 minutes. And I'll act like,
Thieves, maybe.
what were they, Sergio?
Thieves.
Den of thieves. Yeah, how's that? How's that? You made my temple into a den of thieves. Way to go, you guys. It was you guys. And so these guys, are these BC or AD? You know, if they're BC, you know, and the big one is Josephus. Everybody loves Josephus, and you'll see that the people that love the Trinity needed Josephus. But wouldn't have Josephus, who rejected Christ and betrayed, and said, you know what, I'm tired of working for you Jews. I think I'm going to go work for Tiberius and the Jews or the Romans. And he didn't get judged. In Armageddon, he's just decided, well, I'll write a book because we won. I picked the right team. That's so much, what do they call it? Bullshit. How can you even believe it? But I've had Josephus shoved down my throat all my life. You should read it. You should read it. Yeah. You know what? You should quit asking me to read it. He can't be true. It just can't be true unless let's go be Seventh Day Adventist. So Rome had a little kingdom. Now let's nail down this whole Johannine comma, that King James only movement, man. Honestly, I don't know if that's what bumped you up to moderator probably quicker than most, but when you put out that video where that guy was telling that girl her hair's like goats in the mountains or something, and she was looking at her like, what? You still think I'm saved, right? Nope. That was cracking me up, man. Because you don't get a lot of, there's still a guy named Jeff that calls me up every now and then, just reminds me he's praying for me that I'll accept the KJV only, because he's got a good feeling about me. But
Okay.
unless I go KJV only, come on, Paco, you can do it.
He's
And
waiting
I'm
for
going
you.
like,
Yeah.
I'm going like, good to hear from you, Jeff. Let's talk about it again.
Before you
Sometime.
move on, I can hear myself. The Muslims kind of reminds me of the Unitarians, where they accept everything about Jesus except that he's God. So maybe there's a connection there.
It's a preview of the humanist religion, except in the way that the people of the Renaissance, like Robespierre, and he wasn't even the main guy, they wanted to enforce virtue, and love of the France would replace love of God, and you had to show by good works that you loved France. Wear a Phrygian cap, wear the right clothes. Yeah, that's it. That's a big part of it. They are all into, like the humanists today. They'll claim they're as moral as Christians because virtue. They know right from wrong, although they cook and eat children.
Probably because they're not humans that they're eating. They're justified.
In their mind, they aren't human. They are evolved monkeys surviving because they are more fit, I believe is the. So it's these guys, Rome. Look at that. Is that a Phrygian cap?
Looks like it.
I don't know. It could be, but it could not be. What's that? That's a back leg of a bull, or how do they? Okay, you got that one. I got the first two. You get this one, Sergio. What do we got?
Oh, great.
Is it part of a snake?
It could be anything.
Yeah. Here's the way the King James Version would have you believe. For there are three that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these three are one. And there are three that bear witness in earth, the Spirit, the water, and the blood. And these three agree in one. So it makes it sound like there are two things agreeing in one instead of one. That is the record. And all of a sudden, boom, they left out everything in the parentheses in most of the Greek, except the one they tried to force down that poor Erasmus's throat. And I've never had a sword at my throat saying we're going to start here and skin you alive unless you put this in your. He was from that, he was writing for that area. They wrote in that language, and he's like, you got to add it because people liked his work, I guess. There's a funny story about Erasmus. It didn't pay off all the time. Eventually, Rome was going to kill him, and they were looking for him. And he was one of those guys that this is the legend, the myth that he couldn't lie, and the Roman soldiers pulled up on him while a couple of people were paddling him away, and they said, "We're looking for the man Erasmus. Have you seen him?" And he said, and he goes, "He's closer than you think." And he, like made a gesture like you should keep going. And he said, "Thanks," and took off. That was like George Washington getting down the cherry tree to me. But it's
That's-
kind of like,
It's like deception too, though.
when I first heard it, I was in Old Testament survey class at a Bible college. It was 1984. And I was just thinking that was so clever because I was thinking like, I was really kind of like, I wasn't post-millennial yet. I wasn't a preterist. I was still looking. I was reading Francis Schaeffer, still kind of a dispensationalist, but wondering that, expecting some persecution and thinking, that's a good idea. Oh man, because I was not ready to be a martyr. I'm still not. I mean, I'm willing to be a martyr.
Honestly, everyone says they will, but when you're faced with death and when it's knocking on your door, you don't know. You don't know until you're there.
I have made some pretty hard decisions where I just had to say, tell the people at Christian Liberty Academy Satellite Schools, you know what? It's not me, it's you. You're the ones that aren't living up to what we've been teaching here for 15 years. And that was hard because that was my life. So all these good Bibles started using it, Latin manuscripts. What's the difference? No, let's see here. The comma is mainly only attested in those Latin manuscripts of the New Testament, being absent from the vast majority of Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. Well, Erasmus has one. The earliest one being Greek manuscript in the 14th century. It is also totally absent in the gee whiz Coptic and the Syriac, Georgian, and Aramaic or Arabic Bibles from the pre-12th century Arminian witness to the New Testament. So there's 1,000 years it wasn't used, and then some Catholics said, we're going to kill you unless you use it. Despite its absence, it was contained in many printed editions of the New Testament in the past, including the Complutensian Polyglot, usually just referred to as the Polyglot, and the different editions of Textus Receptus from these eras that they added it, like the Geneva Bible, because it was Erasmus, and it like the first two editions were over the top good, so they matched, and they only had him add that one thing. So the Johannine comma is among the most noteworthy variants found within Textus Receptus, in addition to the Confession of the Ethiopian Eunuch, the long ending of Mark. You familiar with that, Sergio? That's something for another day, right?
Yeah, I've heard both. But yeah, I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I don't want to do it. Not tonight, not without RJ around or something like that,
You could attack it, but I think you're onto something else.
It's something, because it's not like Paul didn't shake a snake off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of background noise. I was just muted.
Let's look at what the people here's the pretty small, I know, but their argument is, scriptures change. There's variance. Let's see what they got here. Now, here's how they have this. Single textual variance of the Old Testament, Septuagint versus Masoretic, chronology of the kings of Judah. Methuselah was 187 years old when Lamech was born, not 167. Jacob enters Egypt with 70 or 75. Genesis flood chronology. So I guess I don't even know what they're talking about. Shem was not Melchizedek. Who said he was? Shem was second-born and not Melchizedek. Japheth the Great was firstborn in the middle. All right. I just don't do these type of things very well, but I have, something I've been reading for 50 years and, or 47 years, and I'm into it. I'm into the, reading those 66 books, and I'm good with it. I don't know what, who Demetrius, I guess, these could be good, but as soon as it gets to, I never heard of pseudo Philo of Alexander, the Testament of Moses, goes back to the book of Jubilees, and then right straight into Josephus, Second Esdras. These years did not exist the way the people that put this type of history for Julius Africanus Sextus in 221 AD 55 BC. I think they made it a lot up. I think it's that Scaliger. I think that they had people working for hundreds of years in monasteries faking books on old paper. I mean, they made people believe they could go to a museum in London and say, there's the Hildenberg man or the Heidelberg man. And then later it was exposed. Oh, they found the tooth of a pig, faked a skull around it, put the tooth in it, and said, there's the missing link. For 80 years, until I was like in high school, before they admitted that was fake. They fake it, man.
Yeah, you watch the animation. I mean, that one hits the, that's, what do they call that one? A grand slam. Hit it all out of the park.
Yeah.
When you can liken it into anything, what they show on TV, the Smith-Mundt Act, how the CIA can use propaganda against its own citizens or whatever you want to call us. You watched animation.
Well, we're going to leave this behind. I think that, I just want people to have a reasonable doubt of, and understand why, I am pretty close, it's like, I need to learn this. I have people here because I'm full-time Paco. I don't have another job. When people, hi, what are you doing? Let's stand up and say a little bit about yourself. Hi, I'm the End Time Prophet. I'm on YouTube, Flat Earth Nation, Golden Age Past. I'm the guy that started this whole thing. You should look into it, and people come to me and they, here at the university, especially Joaquin Herrera. He's a great young man. He's engaged. He's, he's not into this gay stuff they're pushing around the school. And he'll just go, I got questions about some flat earth. And it hits me. And I go, oh, shoot, I've been refused. Flat earth is so obvious to me. I've refused to argue it for the last 5 years. So I'm really not the best person to. What are all those stats they use? NASA. I showed him the NASA stuff, but I got to get, I have to be that guy too about instant in season and out of season about for any of those things. So, I should be more familiar with more than like, well, you're falling backwards at 1,000 miles an hour. And his eyes rolled over. He's a second, his first language is Espanol, and he goes, huh? Yeah, okay, I'm going to try harder, come back later, and we'll go over it. Hey, Yao, there he is. Are you getting rained on? We're praying for you, man. We are.
I just want to mention, when I started, what is the word? I tried reading the Apocrypha. I have the Geneva Bible you're talking about in hard copy.
Do you really? How much did that set you back?
It was a gift. Someone gave it to me. It's a little over $100.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very nice Very nice Bible. But what I'm saying though is, you know, I first tried listening to it before I got that book, and then I tried reading it. But what I'll just say it in short. It seems like it's forged. And I can be wrong, but I'm just telling what it seems like. It seems like the one book that I was reading, it seems like it was forged, like it was. I know there's parallel verses, and I'm very familiar. I shouldn't say that word, but I'm familiar with the Bible. I'm familiar with the scriptures, you know. I don't need to give a testimony about how well I've read it and how many times, but I'm familiar with it. And I like to do parallel studies or chain reference or cross reference, whatever the term is, same definition. But when it came across Second Esdras, it just it's just like it was trying too hard to make me believe that it
You
is
know what? That
paralleled, and I didn't
you
like
know,
that.
I'm with you. I'm tracking what you're saying, and it reminds me of like you can watch a movie, and for people that will watch an R-rated movie, because I mean there is a lot of cussing in this movie called In Bruges. It's a decode, and it's one of those ones
Mhm.
that you can watch a Tom Cruise movie and it's a decode. I mean, I absolutely love that movie Ghost Protocol where they blow up the Kremlin, and it's because it's so far fetched. It to me is a better cartoon than that Marvel stuff.
Okay.
But where was I going with that? But when you see something like In Bruges, that propaganda and those actors, everybody's good in it, and it's just over the top of that. At the end of it, it's kind of like you cannot help but, I mean, for a second at least, even me was going like, dang,
Hmm.
that's one honorable mafia psychopath. He sure lived up to what he believed, you know, but he's a gangster. He's either, his character is either the guy that's the head mafia in that movie In Bruges. He's either the loving family man that, spoiler alert, he wants this one guy who made an accident that probably wasn't really his fault to be killed because he made a mistake and he can't put up with it. But he wants him to die happy. So he sends another hitman with him to do a scouting job in Bruges. And while he's in Bruges, the other hitman's supposed to show him a good time so that when he finally kills him, he's in the best time of his life.
Wow.
But the guy that's supposed to kill him ends up liking him and goes like, yeah, I let him go. It was a total accident. You can come and kill me. So the guy does, it just gets out of hand from that point on. But
He's in too deep. He's overtaken by manipulation, by that
right,
smile.
the first hitman, the guy who is the hero of it, Colin Farrell, he's just a poor Irish kid, barely could talk, and well, you'll get money. If there's no morals, who knows what's going on in an unsaved heart? I mean, I don't even want to talk about that. But
Right.
anyway,
We have no
we'll
idea.
need to go over this again after we can do it because I want to keep this about an hour. But you sent me some stuff about some other things that you're working on and kind of,
Oh yeah.
gave me some ideas. So you've been
Yes,
here,
San
huh?
Fernando Valley. That's where I grew up.
This is where you grew up.
Oh yeah, and I forgot to add on the list WonderWorks in Canoga Park, California, where they make many of the models that NASA and the Hollywood, the media uses, where they manipulate the mind and the window of the spirit, the eyes. But anyway, yeah, it's all
Is
there.
your mom and dad are they some of those rich Mexicans that we hear about or something?
No way.
You guys just happen to live
There's
around.
Rocketdyne. Yeah.
You happen to just live around Beverly Hills in that area.
You'd be surprised the diversity of social status that are all just in this one The
Because you
valley
live,
called San
yeah,
Fernando
you live
Valley.
around the richest people
Canoga
in the
Park High
world.
School, yeah, yeah, that's also, yeah, I do. When I would drive to work, there's $100 million worth of automobiles on the road on Ventura Boulevard every morning, just from 7 to 8, just driving and commute. You see all kinds of cars, from beat up, you know, what do they call them? Just beat up cars to
Junkers,
top of the line cars. Yeah,
yeah,
junkers and
beaters,
clunkers
junkers.
and Rolls
Rolls
Royce and
Canardly. Have you ever heard that
yeah.
one, Sergio? I know you're not,
I haven't. But before you change the screen, at Canoga Park High School, that's been resurfaced, kind of like those German buildings that they have side by side. You have an old one with
okay,
its
okay.
architecture, then you have an old one that's resurfaced with stucco.
Where they
I want to
stripped
do
it off to
something on
hide
that.
it. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, that high school is very old.
Well, this joke probably has lost its
And it's not Canoga, it's actually from, they spell it Canoga, but it's actually from an Indian tribe, and it's Ganoga.
got
There's
no.
so much history in this one little valley. It's mind-boggling, and that's where I grew up.
I'm going to fit this in, man. Do you know what? Have you ever heard of a car called a Rolls Canardly? I
No,
own 3 or 4 of them. It rolls down one hill and can hardly get up the next.
did okay. I got you.
I had a series of junkers, but my dad always had me a car.
You see that house that you were showing? That's a kit house. Supposedly,
Yes, it
it's
is.
from.
Yeah, you could have it sent on a train, sent on a boat, and then all you had to do was have competent men that put it together like a
Oh yeah,
Lego
there you go.
puzzle. You know,
You found a lot of good stuff, man. Sherman Way, the railroad tracks.
look at that. So they've got,
Yeah, that thing
and
sticks
that's
out
the
like a sore
thing.
thumb.
Go outside town of any of these rich towns. I believe that Satan's throne actually is not anymore. Before in the book of Revelation, it says, where was it? Philemon? What town was it? Was it Sardis? But he was in where the throne of Satan is. He's not omnipresent. He's in one place at all times. And
Right,
I
right.
believe that his throne is right there, Beverly Hills, Beverly Crest, Hollywood Hills. It's in that area, Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, that whole
And
area is 20 minutes from. It's not even 20 minutes. Only because of traffic. It's like 5 minutes from the valley, from San
yeah,
Fernando Valley.
I've driven through it twice in my life. And that's it. I
Mhm.
never even stopped. But I knew a girl that went to Pepperdine, and her dad was one of
Yeah,
the people.
Pepperdine. That's right. There's another one. I
Her
grew up
dad,
all around all
her
these
dad
places. It's
infiltrated
wild.
the Church of Christian Liberty, and then later on went back to Roman Catholicism. But he basically supported us until the John Birch noticed us because of Congressman Phil Crane. So anyway, this is right outside town, right outside there, the rest of the Hollywood. But how old is it
Real
really?
spots.
That they would call this like a phoenix. Bird with feathers. Here's another one, more feathers. 5 on this one, 6 on that side. So that's not asymmetrical.
No, it's not. Okay.
Kind of.
Why do you think they would draw that?
I don't know. But why do they have feathered headdresses? Now, here's these feathered headdresses.
Mm-hmm. Took a screenshot of some headdresses today.
They're called the hussars, Polish hussars. Now look at it. Even they dressed like. Maybe I should put hussars in there.
They look Mexican or Southern American, whatever they call that area.
Kind of like the Apaches, in a way. Polish winged hussars. This would scare them when they rode into battle. It, we know that there's a record of this in the United States. It, it's something, but I don't know exactly what right now.
The Mayas had headdresses with.
Yeah, but the feathers and
Mhm.
you mount up on the wings of the eagles. It's always interesting to me that maybe they're considering that those are headdresses, is what they're saying. Two of the humans are wearing headdresses, they say. Okay. So you had, I mean, and Boeing Airline was here, huh?
Boeing, yeah, it has two locations. It was in the city, and now they're right outside the city in a tiny little canyon. It's private, so can't go there no more.
So, okay. They were this area, San Fernando Valley, from the famous Roscoe Boulevard, where you got to quit your drag racing. They planned this from the time of the Creature of Jekyll Island. They were anticipating successful Los Angeles Aqueduct, which is
Hmm.
all of that Mulholland Falls, and talk about, well, that's that Chinatown movie, and that Chinatown movie is about the richest people in LA were a bunch of incestuous child molesters, but still they became famous because they brought water, and they started in a real estate land rush in 1889. This is all one deal we're working with now.
Yeah.
The aqueduct, that was a big deal.
It goes uphill, that aqueduct.
I cannot believe my dad took me to that movie when it came out. I was just a kid. He also took me to see Easy Rider. Oh, so you had Hughes Aircraft there, Rockwell International, Boeing, and Teledyne. Wow. And I
Yeah, the
always thought
park.
when you think of Boeing, you
Read
think of
that last
Seattle.
sentence, or that little
The
sentence by
Santa
itself.
Susana Field Lab property has also been closed and will be undergoing extensive environmental cleanup and become an open space park, maybe a golf
Sorry,
course.
the next one.
This one,
In 1987, much of the western district of Canoga Park was renamed West Hills. On June 25, 2005, Canoga Park was named an All-American City.
hats
Yeah,
off.
you look it up. I heard it's the first one. I'm like, how? How is it the All-American City and the first in 2005? But it is, maybe because of all the stuff that's there.
That's California, all American city. That's the Alamo. It's just,
That's the mission in West Hills.
yeah, it's like the mission here downtown in Alamosa. It's like the mission in San Antonio, the Alamo. Yeah, something. What's up with the cottonwood thing? I mean, because that's what Alamosa means, the
Or
cottonwoods.
Cut Ranch.
Alamo.
That's where my wife and I took our engagement pictures
No
with Monroe.
kidding.
Yeah,
Well, I'd like to see those sometime. That'd be nice.
I'll show you.
Those are usually a good happy day. There's usually a good aura around the people on those days.
Yeah,
The School of Excellence looks like a jail. So that's the famous all-American town, huh? One of the first ones.
that's what it says. I mean, we even have a board, well, not a boardwalk, but you know, like the Hollywood Star Fame Boulevard, whatever it's called, that walk with all the stars on the floor. We have one too, but it's with hearts. Yeah, I don't know.
What's this thing? So, what? Let's just do a couple more of these ones that are on your list to possibly look at. This one,
Okay, let me
Wisdom
see if I can
Tree,
see.
Smelting Mountain,
Th that one I would have to show
Charlie
you.
Manson Hills.
That's right there, yeah, between Chatsworth and Simi Hills. Um, there's this, I don't know what kind of story it is, but basically that's where they were hanging out. That's where they were hiding out. And there's cave. He has a cave out there, and I guess you'd have to look it up. But that's just the outline. It's next to Stony Point in Chatsworth. Let's see, so I can zoom in. Okay, there we go.
We're going to give a little background on what do we got going here?
Well, I hear you talking about it a lot. So Skunk Works is where they have made a lot of the their
Nazi inspired secret weapons.
weaponry, but at the same time, they're I don't know how many miles away from Northrop Grumman, but they're basically on the same lot and same property. It's this huge blocked off. I don't know how many blocks in this city. You can't drive through it. You have to drive all the way around. It's a major inconvenience. It's also another major railroad city, but you have Northrop and Skunk Works basically creating the jets and those the B-2 and bomber spy plane, the U-2 spy plane, all these. What was the other one they made? The James Webb.
U-2 or they make those telescopes.
The those the SR-71. Yeah, those things basically. These airplanes that destroy the globe because of how much they can see when they're up there.
Oh yeah.
And you hear all these sonic booms testing out here. You see the test flights. This area is called Aerospace Valley because of all the test flights that they do out here. And people talk about, there's this next event coming up. Is this going to be the next one? Is this going to be the next one? I see these trains, pulling in all these tankers. To me, all I see is a show. They pull those tankers through Canoga Park. They show. It's like a show off, but they never really do anything with them. And I thought about it. I said, well, I live out here in Aerospace Valley, and if it would match up what's on land and also in air. There should be a lot of activity, and it's just dead. It's just like any other season. So
you ever see any of these things take off?
You hear them. You hear the sonic booms. You don't really see them, and when you do run outside to try to see them, they're too high up and too far gone.
By that time,
I have seen.
Yeah, by the time you hear it, they're 700 miles away.
Yeah, I don't know how far, but I have seen the one that looks like a pyramid. I think it's called the B-12. It's this huge triangle. I'm not sure, but that thing was
flying
massive.
wing that was developed by the Nazis.
That thing is massive. I don't think people understand how huge it is. It's like an apartment complex. Like that thing is massive up there in the sky, and it was flying low. I've seen it fly low twice since I've lived here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look, you can see the curve. That's all you need to do is go up in one of those. Was there a curve there, or was that just a haze? That looks like a straight line.
I don't see the curve.
I don't see the curve. I don't believe it. I see that curve. That looks fake. I was hoping they'd show a picture of the German plane, but they didn't. So we'll have to type in.
Yeah, the Blackbird. There you go. That thing's huge too. They have the ones that are not in operation anymore. Maybe a good handful of their planes at this Neil Armstrong.
This is a German plane from 1943. Any similarities?
Very similar. That one has
smaller.
It's tail.
Smaller. Yeah.
The widow's tail.
So this is what they brought back from. They captured it, and then they decide. You know what they do? The governments, they like to capture things and then reverse engineer them. They captured that. I think that they knew about it all the time. Important.
Yeah, those
powered by these jet engines, rockets, steam powered, basically, working with H2O2, hydrogen peroxide.
Do they all use peroxide as a propellant?
And at the beginning, they all did, because that's what
the main one.
Goddard You know, that's how what they found out how to make steam. Now they started mixing it with hydrogen peroxide and kerosene because they've had rockets. They've had rockets forever. But they're not liquid fueled. So they didn't like them. Somehow they had to make it work, you know, with the
Yeah,
they
that looks like it could. Yeah.
they didn't want, yeah, they could have used these, and of course that looks like a hand grenade because it's everything we copy from the Chinese, man. They're the ones, you know, that
Yeah, they're pretty good with their
yeah, they're pretty
their
good with that.
pyrotechnics.
Yeah, and for some reason we wanted to make liquid fuel because somehow there's more going on with that oxygen than they care to admit.
Same
So,
thing with water. 1 gallon is pretty heavy.
yeah, yeah. Distilled water, I think, is 8.3 pounds or something.
Oh, I
So
didn't think about that. Yeah.
but if you add like coffee, would be 8.5 or something. I don't know. It could get heavy. So
We
here's
drink
the
alkaline water. Go ahead.
yeah, that wouldn't be add much to it at all. I'm glad to hear that more and more people are taking their water seriously. You know what I started doing is wiggling my toes and my fingers and stuff at night to let you know from every
Okay.
extremity, you know, wake up my mitochondria and say, "Okay, boys, we're napping now. We're sleeping. Get your rest." But we're all in on this together. I'm trying to straighten out this hammer toe. I got this toe that's jacking off to the right that's going to be buried underneath the other toe here in a couple of years unless this works. Rockets and missiles. Liquid. Yeah, the when I first started this, I got into it because of the Redstone missiles. That's when I first realized that Wernher von Braun, one of the first things he did, ROCKET, was when he wanted to make better rockets. He requested that the Redstone missile be funded more. And it was one of the first big ones. Really? Really? That wasn't Wikipedia? Okay, this is fired by, and this is when I started using it to open up the rocks and stuff like that. Let's see if they'll get into it. From 58, anyway, Wernher von Braun came over and said, you know, I'm going to need $500,000 more dollars. That was his first request, was to use these rockets, and he needed more money. Mercury Redstone. So yeah, that was the first Mercury flights when they were strapping people on top of these. They got it down pretty good because I mean, you got to be careful. This stuff will kill you in a heartbeat. You know, they have to admit, you know, that the Operation Paperclip came over and took over. This is what the United States could do with Jack Parsons and their boys and what they stole, because you know we spy too. So we spied and we knew what they were doing. And so here's what we had when we brought them over. This. And they went on to it. Does it talk about how it was powered? They were Rocketdyne H1s. Thrust liquid propellant rocket. Yep, that was the first one. So here it is. It's going to be, they ignited the hydrogen peroxide with liquid propellants. It's going to be H2O2. Goddard did it, and of course he's the one that blew up everything until he got the right mixture of hydrogen peroxide and kerosene. So basically, the V2 was used. They call it an alcohol LOX, liquid propellant engine, hydrogen peroxide to drive the fuel pumps. Well, it's to drive everything. That was it. Hydrogen
Liquid
peroxide,
oxygen.
when they call it as a monopropellant, mono, it was the one propellant that assisted in the takeoffs. It's such a big deal because it's basically water. They say a water molecule is H2O2. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2, not H2O. But is water really H16O8? We don't know, because we know it breaks down, it touches on 5 sides. Where do you really stop it and say, no, it's still perfect? So that's interesting. It makes me want to, what is heavy water? Remember, you hear about that sometimes. They were trying to make it, they needed to segregate, because in their world, H20 to H2O, D2O is a form. It's like a water. And you know what? Every 660 molecules of water is a heavy water, known as a heavy hydrogen isotope. There's also semi-heavy water, more common than pure heavy water. Heavy water is less disassociated at a given temperature, and it does not have the slightly blue water. Regular water is slightly blue, not heavy water. But there is a heavy water. The deuterium nuclei consists of a neutron and a proton. That's what they say about regular water. The nucleus of the protium, normal hydrogen, that atom consists only of a proton. The additional neutron makes a deuterium atom twice as heavy as a plutonium atom, protium atom. Honestly, I haven't studied this in a long time. We were so, after we were, no, here's the way it went down, with Doug Bartles and RJ and me. I can walk to gold. Hey, look, I walked to gold. I found gold. We can crash the market. We'll flood them with gold. And they're going like, slow down, future Paco. Do you want to be in charge of crashing the economy? And I said, no, it'd probably be better if Trump or Bush or one of those guys crashed the economy. And we decided, let's don't go digging for the gold now and show how the body parts cried out. We found it with hydrogen peroxide. Let's figure out the Bible, because as it seemed, I was digging in on some doctrines that probably I should have let go of much earlier, according to some people. You know who. Anything you want to add before, we let these people go? This is my 3rd video today. I'm going to get some food in me, man.
No, we're good.
All right. Thank you guys for showing up. We're going to be praying for all of my moderators and everyone that are in the path of these storms, because, life goes on. In this life, you'll have tribulation, and then your house gets hit by a tornado or a hailstorm, and you're going to be ready, because you love the Lord, and you know that it's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past, because the mud flood was Armageddon. You have a feeling that you're called, chosen, predestined, elect to decide to confess that you need Jesus Christ as your Savior, because he's opened your eyes. You can hear his voice. Your ears are open now. You were born physically, and then now you're spiritually born again. That's fantastic. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else because we're also called, chosen, trying to prove our self faithful to having your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakamen.